Hi, everybody. Can you hear me well? Yeah? They told me that it is quite different to present in this setup, and they told me, if you make a joke and nobody laughs, don't get worried. This setup is a little bit complicated. Anyway, I'll do my best to get your attention, given that I'm at the attention stage, and to make the presentation as engaging as possible, okay? Today I'm gonna start talking a little bit about the future. And to talk about the future, I think we all need to acknowledge that the world is changing super fast. If you think about our life today and our life like 20 years ago, it's very, very different, right? And what is driving that change? I think we all agree that technology is disrupting our life so fast that this is making that every single day of our life is completely different to how it was a few years ago. And to me, there is an element that is driving a lot of this disruption, which is the connectivity. If we go back 20 years ago, we were living in an offline world. Most of our life was offline, right? Maybe sometimes we were sitting next to a telephone, and that was the only moment of connectivity, right? So if you were out party and your mother was trying to find you, good luck, right? You couldn't find me ever, right? It was super tough to engage to find me in this disconnected world. And then we got our very good friend, right? The telephone got into our life, and we went from an offline world into a 24/7 online world. We are all the time connected, right? Connectivity is 24/7. But still today, if we look at the space, okay, not so much at the time, at the space, we can still differentiate which is the connectivity space, right? And what is the kind of offline space of the world, right? We still can see that there is an online and offline world. But this is changing. The experience is merging, and that differentiation is getting less and less clear. For example, if you are at home and you're speaking to me, then Alexa is listening to your voice. So my voice is now online, right? When I thought it was offline. So there are more and more things that are making our experience much more integrated. And the reason why this is happening and this is even accelerating is because there are a few technologies that are evolving in parallel at the same time, and the combination is what is driving such a disruption. I'm going to name a few of these technologies. The first one is Internet of Things. We all have a watch that is connected to the internet. There are fridges connected to the internet. There are coffee machines connected to the internet. There are cleaning things connected to the internet. There are mirrors connected to the internet. There are jackets. So more and more elements are being connected. The second thing are cyborgs, right? This sounds very science fiction. It's like, no, this is more like Star Wars. But you know, the first cyborg that I met is a friend that has diabetes. So he has implemented some technology into his body to measure the glucose level, right? So suddenly we're starting to see more and more technology implemented into our body. Today, most of that technology is for health issues, but I'm convinced that we're going to see more and more technology implemented also to enhance our capabilities. So if I can do my job in 4 hours instead of 8 because I have some kind of chips that are helping me perform faster, I'm sure I will implement them, and I will go with the kids to play 4 hours before, right? And all these elements that are getting implemented into our body, of course, they are connected to the internet, right? So there is more and more connectivity. All good? There's some feedback? Great, there is feedback. Fantastic, thank you. Another element that is getting into our lives are the robots, right? So the cleaning thing, some automatic coffee machines. So we're getting more and more robots to make our life easier and more comfortable. Probably too comfortable, but more comfortable, right? And all these robots are connected to the internet. Augmented reality, right? We all played Pokemon Go. We're seeing more and more applications. I was actually a few days ago at the gym lifting weights. You see that I'm very strong, right? And you know, lifting weights is a very boring experience, right? You probably have done it. And I thought, why? I cannot put on glasses and I can start like fighting some alien invasion instead of like looking at the mirror, right? I can enhance the experience so much more by incorporating some augmented reality that I believe that we will see more and more applications of augmented reality into very boring type of activities. And of course, all that augmented reality will be connected to the internet, right? So all this is making that experience so much integrated and messy. And then we got the artificial intelligence, right? I don't know how many of the talks of these days are about artificial intelligence, probably 70% of them. I will not be the exception, I'm sorry. I will speak a little bit about artificial intelligence, right? Because this is the software that is going to power all this new integrated, connected experience. And now we have such a strong software that is going to be integrated into all these applications. And before getting into the artificial intelligence, I'm going to do a little bit of a step back, okay? And I'm going to ask you a question to confirm that there is feedback. What makes us human? What makes us different to the other animals and things in the planet? Anybody want to try to answer? Okay, it's going to be tough to hear, so I will give the answer, right? To me, the main element is the way that we think, right? So our brain. We have much more sophisticated thinking compared to any other thing in the planet, right? And if you analyze our thoughts, you will realize that we think by having a conversation with ourselves. So the way that you think is like, hey, Jorge, you shouldn't have said that, or the people are engaged, they're not engaged. You should say, so all our thoughts are built on conversations. Do we agree? Actually, there are people that, unfortunately, they are born that they cannot listen and they cannot speak, and they struggle to think because they cannot build the stuff, right? And when they learn how to read, they think picturing words, right? They write in their head. So we agree that there is an element that is the language, that is a fundamental building block of the way that we think. But the language is an exclusive thing for the humans, right? Only humans can use the language. That's why we are the most advanced species in the world, because we are the only one that can use the language, right? Not so right? Not anymore, eh? We were the only thing that could use the language, and not anymore. So for the first time in history, there is another thing in the planet that can use the language. Scary, right? For the first time, machines are able to participate into the language game. And this is very recent. If you think about 5 years ago, and you remember having a conversation with Alexa, 90% of the conversation, I ended up saying, Alexa, you are stupid. You don't get it. That was 5 years ago. Today, I have a conversation with ChatGPT. 90% of the times, I ended up saying, what the fuck? It's like a human, right? So they are now part of the language game. And I don't know if you know the story, but there was an element that allowed the machines to participate on the language game. And it was actually a paper published by Google in 2017 that is called Attention is All You Need. And in that paper, they introduced the concept of the relevant attention that each word should pay to the other words in order to get the full context. And they introduced what today is the transformer, which is the T in GPT, and that completely changed the way that machines understand the language. I'm going to read you an example to better explain this case. We have two sentences. Alice is a more experienced sales manager than Barbara, even though she's 10 years older. And Alice is a more experienced sales manager than Barbara, even though she's 10 years older. Humans, we very quickly associate that in the first sentence, younger refer to Alice, and in the second sentence, older refer to Barbara. That is something that we do immediately, but that is super difficult to show to a machine because the sentences are almost equal. And that paper introduced a methodology to allow machines to understand, okay, this is Barbara, this is Alice, okay? And this was the game changer, right? After this, we know the rest of the story until today. Good? Feedback? Yeah? Good. Okay, so now the question is, how will this change our life, right? And I'm going to bring a story that I love. Right? Have you read *Sapiens*, the book from? Okay, so if you read it, don't say the answer. But do you know what is probably the most successful species in the world in the last 100 years in terms of genetical evolution and in terms of like increasing population? It's a chicken. The chicken population has grown, boom, like this in the last, I think, 50 years. It's incredible. If you see the chart, it's mind-blowing. So the chicken is the most successful genetical evolution in the last century, right? Amazing. Good job, chickens. But what is the price, right? What price are they paying for that? It's a very high price. If we think about the humans, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit negative right now, but if we think about the humans in the Paleolithic era, we were living in a few kilometers, we were hunting, we were collecting, we were in nature, we were smelling, touching, seeing lights, colors. It was a very rich experience. Then we got the agricultural revolution. And we went from a few kilometers into a few hundred meters. Not too bad. We were touching, we were smelling. Less rich experience, but still quite decent, right? And then we got into the Industrial Revolution, and we went into a smaller space, less stimulus, less rich experience. And then, my friends, we got into the digital revolution, and we got into COVID, and we got into a fucking room 24/7, right? So is that the chicken price that we're paying? I don't know, right? But it doesn't sound very promising, right? But I want to bring a little bit of positiveness into this speech. I do believe that artificial intelligence is going to remove us from the room. It's going to take on all those jobs that we're doing in a computer, and it's going to push us back into our real place, right, where we belong. We belong in nature. We belong in other. We don't belong into a room in front of a screen. So I am positive, thinking about my kids, that AI is going to help us actually go back to our core nature. And this was not part of the presentation, but I'm sorry, I get very passionate about this. Okay, these are ideas on how our life will change. You probably have 1,000 other ideas that you can discuss. And a few stats, right? Humans started talking 200,000 years ago. Look at the impact of talking. Humans started writing 5,000 years ago. Look at the impact of writing. Everything that education, internet, There is so much that has been generated by the fact that we can write. If you ask a guy 4,995 years ago what is going to happen with writing, they could never imagine what we're doing with writing today. If you ask us what is going to happen in 100 years with machine language, we have no idea. We are in a singularity moment. This is a singularity moment for the humankind. We have no idea, but stay tuned and stay open to change, because the change is going to be big. Okay, this is MadTech, so let's go a little bit into the advertising side of this. How will be advertising in this new reality that I picture, where the experience is merged, everything is integrated, everything is connected, there is AI? What is going to happen, right? Let me bring a few ideas. Idea number one is that inventory is going to explode. Why? Because everything that is connected to the internet has the possibility of recommending you a product. My coffee machine can recommend me a product. My mirror can recommend me a cream. My fridge can recommend me a new milk. My glucose thing can recommend me a healthier diet. Alexa can recommend me to buy whatever, right? So this increasing connectivity also increase the inventory window, right? So we will see much more inventory and different inventory flowing into the internet. The second thing is that the user will be more sensible to that advertising. Actually, today, many people complain about interstitial, right? It's like, whoa, I got an interstitial, I need to push on the X. Wow, that's so annoying. It's not such a big deal, right? Imagine that you get into your bathroom and your mirror show an interstitial, right? Or that you get into your living room and Alexa starts singing, buy this new chocolate, whatever, right? It's like, what the fuck, right? It's like, it's my house, it's my living room. So this new inventory have the possibility of being very intrusive. And if it's very intrusive, we will probably start disconnecting stuff, right? So we will need to find that balance between that increasing inventory combined with a much more integrated experience, a much more friendly experience for the user. Okay? There is another element here that is that we're moving into a clickless economy, right? For the advertising space. I think we know that this new type of conversation experience, advertising will be much more based on recommendations, right? It's like, hey, why don't you try this new food? Or why don't you take this into account? That is the type of recommendation that you receive from a friend. And that is what actually resonates the most. It's not so much about showing you a link. It's much more about influencing you in the right way, in the best possible contextual way, because actually this must be contextual. I don't expect to be speaking with ChatGPT about my vacation and then receiving a recommendation about buying a new car, right? I expect that conversation, that context will stay, right? So this clickless economy, this more influential conversation is also something that we will look for in this new experience, in this new world. And the last change, which is privacy, to me is one of the biggest ones. And we've been speaking about privacy for a while. And I hear a lot that retargeting is not respecting my privacy, right? It's like, you know, I saw a flight and now you show me an ad about the flight and I didn't give your permission. Like, okay, but it's a flight, right? It's not a big deal. I mean, it's just showing you a flight. What happens when you are arguing with your wife because your kid is sick, or because you're bankrupt, or because your business is not doing well, or because you're rich? And that information today is being captured, right? that information, guys, is being captured every single day. And that information is very sensible, right? So it's fundamental that we regulate that information very carefully, because otherwise we're going to get into a lot of troubles. Okay, I only have 2 minutes. I would love to have 10 more, but I only have 2, so I will jump into contextual advertising, okay? How is contextual going to evolve? And that's where, they invited me, so I need to do a little bit of contextual advertising here. So that's where my company get into picture. I'm the founder of Seedtag. I started the company 11 years ago. I used to work at Google together with my co-founder, and we started this incredible adventure. And we do contextual advertising for a living. Why contextual is important in this world? First, because today 50% of the users are not reachable through cookies. So we still need an alternative that reaches 100% of the population. 50% of the people is a lot of people, guys. It's a lot of people. The thing is that contextual today is still focused on content categorization and upper funnel awareness. And if we want to effectively engage with this 100% of the population, we need to do much more than that. And that's why we decided to create a new category that is neuro-contextual, combining the advancement in AI with the power of contextual advertising. And neuro-contextual is pretty much about understanding the people, understanding the way that they think and that they decide. We've done that together with scientists. We've been working with neuroscientists to understand how can we influence in the people in a way that we maximize the effectiveness of the ads. And we got to the conclusions that there are 3 main pillars for that. Pillar number 1 is the interest. We need to be relevant to the interest of the user. We said that before. If you're interested in going on vacation, I cannot show you an ad about a car. We need to capture the user when they're interested into something and feed into that interest to maximize the way that these ads are getting into their memory. Pillar number 2 is the emotion. If you guys think about the most relevant memories of your life, all of them happened in a period that you were going through an intense emotional experience, either sad or happy or excited, but those are the memories that stay, right? So we need to leverage on the emotion in order to get that ad sticking into the user brain. And the number 3 is the intent. We need to understand the intentionality of the user. Are they going for information? Are they going for research? Are they going to buy something? And these 3 pillars is something that we're able to extract in real time from the content using the power of contextual AI. So before, contextual advertising was about reading the page and defining categories. Now it's about understanding the user and understanding how they think, how they feel, and how they decide. And that's what we've pioneered, and we have seen that this has massive impact in performance. From the top to the bottom of the funnel, we can maximize the impact by combining these 3 main pillars and by using this neuro-contextual approach. And with this, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate the attention. Yeah, have a good day.